You stop that!
Hey! Across the 2 seasons of the original series, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, Scooby meets 2 different werewolves that are just similar enough that I sometimes would mix them up as a kid. That didn't matter though, because I loved them both anyway. They've actually got a lot of unique charms when you look at them together. And since they are still so similar anyway, why don't we look at both today and see how these classic episodes fare with similar wolfmen? One of them is arguably one of the most recognizable episodes of the series, with multiple of the most iconic villains, so there's certainly much to see. Kind of have to feel bad for the other Wolfie, who doesn't get as much love. We'll send him some today, it's fine. But of course, we're starting with the first season episode that gives us the full-on homage to the great classic Universal horror films. Exactly the way a young horror lover to be would want. Let's get into the real meat, no need to delay, I know what you want here. Season 1, Episode 11, A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts. Originally aired November 22nd, 1969. One of the most iconic episodes, this is easily one of the most released on home video. There was the dedicated VHS in 1989, which the other episode we're talking about in this video also was featured on, which further justifies this combination. There's the Hanna-Barbera Festival of Fun VHS in 1991. 2001 saw the Spookiest Tales VHS and DVD that was one of the most watched and important for me growing up. And even after the complete season and series releases, this continued with the Run for Your Life DVD in 2013, the Favorite Frights DVD in 2015, and even 2019's 50th Anniversary 50-episode DVD set as seen here, not to mention being a bonus feature on any movies. Basically, if you've seen a Scooby-Doo episode, you've likely seen this one. They made sure of that. Let's run down what was so magical about this one. The mood is immediately set perfectly with the castle under the full moon, the werewolf looking out from above. This is our first Universal horror homage, referencing 1941's The Wolf Man, which was my favorite of the Universal horrors growing up. For whatever reason, I think it was just a lot more human. He sees the gang driving close and growls at them, a very wolfy thing to do. Apparently the gang are actually here on purpose this time, to see Franken Castle, the only one to be transported stone by stone from Transylvania. So we're combining Frankenstein and Dracula mythology immediately, which makes sense for this episode. Daphne shakes it up more by throwing in hearing about werewolves in Transylvania, which, alright, Jinx says, why don't you? Sorry to be evil and woke, but we do say the G slur many times in this episode. I will not be repeating it, so I will just be referring to the woman by the name on her character design, Carlotta, despite it not being used in the episode directly. Romani people have been depicted negatively, such as this very episode, with the slur for long enough without perpetuating it in this video, often in a way that's still commonly used, like when people say you got ripped off and then accidentally say a variation of the G slur, and probably not meaning it or knowing how bad it is. Daphne sees her wagon offering fortunes, and wants to stop for a reading, while Velma of course believes it to be nonsense. The others are all in though, so much that Fred loses the blue of his collar. They meet with Carlotta, who might be the most iconic part of the episode, for better or worse, even being on the cover art of the Spookiest Tales release. What truly makes her iconic is being voiced by June Foray, who was not only Rocky, friend of Bullwinkle, but multiple iconic cartoon witches. Sadly, like with all but one of her Scooby appearances, she goes uncredited for the performance, yet her voice truly makes this one.
So you want your fortunes told? Gather round, my pretties, and we'll peer into the crystal ball. Spirits rise and spirits fall. Reveal your secrets. Tell us all.
Her reading sees danger for the gang the longer they stay here, evil forces from the world of the dead awaiting. Velma asks about Franken Castle, and Carlotta warns them that the caretaker ran away in fear today, and they'll meet their doom if they proceed. They apprehensively carry on, but worried about the full moon now that they have werewolf fears. They pull up and call out, but then remember the disappearance of the caretaker, and yet, with a few lightning strikes, the drawbridge lowers. Walking up, we get our vampire of the evening, another Universal horror homage, in this case 1931's Dracula, with the vampire imitating Bela Lugosi best he can as he tells them to go.
You stop that! We have permission to visit this castle.
He warns them a final time, then turns into a bat, chasing everyone off the bridge except for danger-prone Daphne, trapped on the other side and falling. Worse, we get our third homage already, Frankenstein's monster from, well, 1931's Frankenstein already showing up. So really, we have the biggest and most recognizable Universal monsters all present and ready to attack the gang in one go. Not unlike the classic team-up films the monsters featured in. The monster hurries after Daphne, chasing with surprising speed, so Fred throws throws a lasso to the other side, and Shaggy feels worried enough to agree to he and Scoob taking the swing. They successfully make it, but as Scoob stands guard, he comes face to face with the snarling werewolf they were so worried about, who creeps up on an unsuspecting Shaggy. Wolfie chases Shag until Scoob sticks his leg out in some armor to trip him, and they run to another room to hide, completely forgetting the others at this point. With Wolfie on the lookout, Shaggy opts for more ventriloquism, leading him to destroy suits all over the room, as well as the piano, which gives Scooby an idea. Turning into a monster himself, he starts backing Wolfie up, while Shaggy for once has a trap waiting, successfully capturing the Wolf Man. Meanwhile, Fred and Velma manage to make it over themselves, finding a room with a lit fireplace, but also old Dracula waiting for them again, warning that their spirits will dwell here forever and becoming a bat again. Having ducked down, Velma loses her glasses, unable to see as we all know, and unknowingly crawls through a secret door behind the fireplace. Fred lost on what's occurred. Elsewhere, the boys seem to have found themselves in a kitchen, but checking the fridge, they find pickled vampire wings, werewolf snacks, chunky style, and new and improved fried moonbeams. Not to their taste, Scoob heads to check the pantry, careful to check for werewolves, but a worse fright seems to await as Frankenstein's monster appears again. The boys escape down a dumbwaiter, while Velma feels her way around, mistaking a skeleton for Shaggy. Easy mistake though, understandable.
It must be the playroom. There's so many interesting toys.
She hears someone coming and runs, falling into a barrel, but down fall the boys, realizing it's the torture chamber, and the Iron Maiden seems to be watching them. Even with the dismal vibes, Scoob smells Scooby snacks, one even jumping out of the barrel, and Velma reveals herself, asking if Shaggy has her extra glasses. Interesting that he's the one carrying them, but of course, safer than trusting herself, and we know danger-prone Daphne would fall on them. Not exactly delighted when she puts them on and sees the place. And speaking of, they hear their missing friend call out, so they run over and find a dungeon, Daphne down inside. While she says a weird man chased her and locked her in, the Iron Maiden opens to reveal Dracula, so while they send a rope down for her, he starts creeping toward them with intent to push. Scooby thankfully sees and runs over to bravely tie up Drac's feet, and dragging him along. With Daph safe, Scoob drops the old vampire down into the dungeon. They run through the Iron Maiden, which is apparently a secret door, and head into an increasingly dark tunnel. And when they see a light and open the door, the boys have vanished. Waiting, however, is Fred, and Daphne reveals a clue she found written on the dungeon wall
In 1668.
which says, "I have fooled them all. I may perish, but I'll be as rich as King Tut." Velma makes the association with pharaohs from Egypt, keeping their wealth by being buried with it, so Fred decides they need to head to the Frankencrypt after finding the boys. Speaking of, they've somehow made it to a mad scientist's lab. Frankenstein's monster is seemingly under a sheet, so they decide to blast it, which backfires and hits Scooby. He doesn't appreciate the drowning, so he turns it back on Shaggy. Eventually, they decide to play mad scientist, unaware that the Wolfman has returned, and they never have to, tossing their failed potion at him and making him retreat. Who knows how much time has passed by the time Scooby pretends to be the monster and gets strapped in, while the real thing seems to have appeared, the two finding themselves in a chase on wheels. They ditch the guy and take hold of the sheet, their impromptu parachute stopping them before falling to their doom, and just in time for the others to find them. They make it to the crypt and find a coffin with the date in the clue, but when they open it, they find Dracula waiting inside. He chases them around while the boys think to use a tapestry as a trap, twice now that they've taken the initiative, but instead of stopping Drac, he runs off and gets back into the coffin with it. Thinking they've trapped him, they open it back up, finding it empty outside of some jewels and Carlotta's earring. Scoob then finds part of the tapestry, jewels sewn into the back. Realizing the jewels from the clue were there all along, they decide to pay Carlotta another visit, and questioning her, Scoob pulls out the tapestry from under her, showing the others.
Give me that, you mutt!
Bro runs off with the tapestry, but Scooby follows close behind, tripping him as a cop arrives conveniently, saying the caretaker had reported trouble. The man on the ground uncovers himself, turning out to be Big Bob Oakley, a master of disguises wanted in 7 states. Outside of Carlotta, John Stevenson voices him and every one of his other monsters he single-handedly took on, which is fitting given that Stevenson was practically most of the villains in the show. Side note, I love the lighting in this shot of Fred and Daphne. It's unusual to see this level of detail. They assess Big Bob was haunting the castle to get the jewels, of course, and we get the series' first version of this iconic line.
Might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
Just like many don't remember that the musical chases didn't start until the 2nd season, a lot of people don't realize it took a while for this to become a thing either. Later, they enjoy a scenic meal outside of the castle. Velma stumped about how Big Bob turned into a bat and had it come after them. Right on cue, down the bat flies toward Shaggy's sandwich, Fred realizing it's fake and on a wire, and also coming down the wire is Scoob, chomping on the sandwich. And that's A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts. I've always found that to be a peculiar title. Certainly the amount of monsters counts as a gaggle, and if we're committing to the frequent name scheme, Galloping Ghosts fits with that as well, but I always mistake this title for other episodes, because I don't consider anything in this episode to be ghostly. None of the monsters are implied to be spirits. You've got a vampire, a werewolf, Frankenstein's monster, Carlotta who's supposedly just a regular lady at first glance, but no ghosts, not a single one, and that always kind of bothered me. Sometimes I couldn't tell this and the Green Ghosts episode A Night of Fry is No Delight apart based on the names. I honestly might even switch the two if it were my own choice. I feel like both names fit the other episode better, but maybe I'm just off my own rocker. As for the episode itself though, it's obviously a perfect classic. Despite being regular length, it feels like more happens than usual. It's such a busy episode, and even still it has time to spend on the boys just goofing around in the lab and going up against two different monsters before the scene is finally over. I think having any of the three monsters here alone would have made this episode memorable, but the team-up effect of the Great Three Universal Horror monsters seals this one in. The vampire design is one of the more simple ones of the franchise, but there's just something still menacing and creepy about him, and Stevenson nails the Bela Lugosi kind of voice that adds to it. His appearances are some of the most frightening in this one to me. The Wolfman isn't necessarily as potentially scary, but still such a solid design that does manage to feel original compared to the vampire, and Frankenstein's monster is probably the least frightening, but he gets the job done filling out the lineup. The three of them can't all have as much detail in this runtime, but they still all make a mark. Most memorable, of course, still has to be Carlotta, the fortune teller, with the effective June 4A performance. Big Bob certainly is talented if he can change his voice up to sound as iconic as her. The design by nature is kind of unfortunate now, but the character and Fourier's performance remain one of the most iconic. I definitely don't think she would have been as strong or remembered with a different performance. Fourier really just was perfect for this type of role, which is why she continued to play these types so often. The three monsters are iconic, but you show someone Carlotta, and they instantly will know this episode. The setting also is really nice. You have the gang coming to this creepy old castle by choice rather than ending up there by accident, and the lush ways it's been painted and detailed throughout the episode really serve to make this one of the most memorable in every aspect, from villain to location. And the comedy is still really solid as well. Velma ending up in the torture chamber was always one of my favorite scenes growing up. It's also funny how they just combine all of the monsters lore and have it all come from Transylvania, just making up their own stuff to fit what they need. There are so many memorable scenes and moments in this one, it's become one of the most remembered for good reason. We had another Wolfman in the following season though, this time as the sole villain. Let's see if he can take the spotlight away from this one.
The ghosts, the witches, and the mysteries are back. Now collect all of these awesome Scooby-Doo adventures on DVD. It's Scooby-Doo's spookiest tales. Ghosts, bats, and of course, scaredy cats. Scooby-Doo. Collect them all on DVD from Warner Brothers Family Entertainment. Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
Season 2, Episode 7, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Werewolf? Originally aired October 24th, 1970. The title is actually a reference to the song Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf from Disney's hugely successful 1933 short film Three Little Pigs. The same song also served as inspiration for the title of the 1962 play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and its 1966 film adaptation. As mentioned before, this episode has already teamed up with Gaggle on the first VHS, and likewise joined it on Run for Your Life beyond typical complete releases. Once again, we open up in pure atmosphere under a full moon, a werewolf howling up on a cliff, and this one looks a lot more gnarly than the prior Wolfie. Meanwhile, the gang are cooking at their campsite. Love the flowers tent back here. Daphne then refers to the boys as the Laurel and Hardy of the outdoors, unintentional foreshadowing for when they would later meet the fictionalized versions of the comedy duo in a couple of years. That's another video to come though. The boys are trying to fix Scooby's pup tent, but sadly, it can never be that easy. Their enjoyment of the food gets interrupted when they hear the distant howls, and creepier, they see red eyes looking out of the woods, everyone rushing to their tents. After some calm, they assume it was a wolf and left, so they head out to be sure. Scoop finds some weird looking tracks, which Velma believes are from a large wolf, the only problem being that wolves walk on all fours. These were from a two-legged animal, like a werewolf. Love how Velma's collar turns into her skin here. They decide they have to follow the tracks and solve the mystery now, where they get a spook that turns Fred into a T-Rex here. Before them is a graveyard, but what's odd is a freshly dug grave in such an old graveyard. Up close, they find the clearly old coffin open and empty. The gravestone reading, "Here lies Silas Long, half man and half wolf." Fred tries to stop the boys from running immediately, but Shaggy has scissors for just such an occasion. They find more footprints leaving the grave, so it seems we have a rare ghost of a werewolf werewolf this time, actually. The tracks lead them to an old abandoned mill, and more howls from inside frighten them, so it must be the right track.
Nothing like a cheery greeting from your friendly neighborhood werewolf ghost.
It's pretty dusty inside, but not totally empty, the werewolf peeking at them from the window. They split up per usual, but as the boys carry on, they remain unaware that the werewolf stalks them. This is likely another Universal horror callback. In this case, 1948's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Everywhere the boys turn, they remain oblivious to Wolfie almost having them, up until Shaggy pulls an old mask down, triggering a trapdoor that dumps the Wolfman. Elsewhere in the mill, the trio find more tracks that oddly disappear into the wall, substantiating that the werewolf is a ghost, but they check for a secret opening anyway, finding the trigger and exposing the next room. On a table, they find a suspicious map of the general area of this place, 3 areas including the mill being marked. Not much time to think though, the Wolfman finds them, but they think quick and hide behind boxes, then topple them on him. Everyone runs right into each other, Shaggy happily oblivious to the new findings until hearing the growls, and thus, not even halfway in, we get the trend of the second season featuring a musical chase sequence. The song this time being Tell Me, Tell Me.
Hey girl, you got me running. Na 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 na. Tell me where you've been hiding. I took a look and I decided.
Honestly, a very good one. Like most of them, it's entirely irrelevant to the visuals and plot, but it feels very Scooby vibe, and instantly recognizable to me when I hear it. I love the bit where Scooby takes the trash can lids and uses them as wings to fly himself and Shaggy away, at least until they hit a wall and fall into a bunch of wool. The others walk around looking for them and get a fright when they see the two, and their mad dash has Scooby realize how they look, turning on a fan to clean them up. They look around hoping to find their friends, startled by some weird looking barrels, and even more so when they see an eye inside. Fred pops out, however, the trio having hid there waiting for the Wolfman. Velma spots something in Shaggy's ear, which he explains to be the wool they fell in, making Fred realize it was them they saw, but also sets off Velma's confusion about wool being in an abandoned mill. So now that's wool, the weird barrels with rubber tubes, a map, and a ghostly Wolfman. Just as they realize they can't find the werewolf anywhere, they hear his howls again, when a rail car flies out suddenly toward a barge. So Fred has them split up again to check both directions. The trio find the rail tracks and follow them to a door that opens up to send another car, and peeking around, they see a shadow. They can't find who it belongs to though, and worse, whoever it was locks them in, courtesy of a clawed green hand. Outside, the boys run alongside a car. The Wolfman right behind them as part of the barge opens up for the car to disappear into. Wolfie chases them again, and honestly, his snarls are kind of not at all intimidating, and I can't tell if it makes him less ominous or actually scarier. There's something so animalistic about them. The boys don costumes to do their thing, giving Wolfie a haircut that even his mother couldn't love until Shaggy's got him fully bald. The boys run down into a tunnel and decide to follow it, while the other 3 continue to wonder about their findings, startled by some noises. Daphne follows them to the floor where a trap door opens up, the boys popping out, and explaining what they saw with the cars disappearing into the barge. Fred and Velma kind of get weirdly mean about it when they don't believe it, so Shaggy admits defeat and decides to take them to see for themselves. Sure enough, the top of the barge opens up, and they run inside to see, finding all of the barrels here, but also the bald Wolfman just outside. He pulls one of the barrels out of the water, and it starts making sheep noises, which seems to solve this one for Velma and Fred finally. The boys get to work as decoys to lure out Wolfie like they often do, sending themselves off in a barrel like the sheep, while the trio have a crane and hook ready to grab the ghost. As planned, he picks up the barrel, the boys spook him, the girls direct Fred, but somehow danger-prone Daphne gets the hook instead, flying backwards and hitting the barrel even. Wolfie is not pleased, but at least the boys take a nice trip down the river away from him. But as the others help Daph, Wolfie heads out after the boys, and I love this part.
I'd trade most anything for a good fast motor right now.
Except me.
Right, anything except you, pal.
The chase intensifies, while the others try to catch them by land, but the boys find themselves down a waterfall, where they safely are caught in a net by their friends. Wolfie left to his own doom. With the gang all safe, they hear a pitiful cry for help that's always made me laugh. They look over and find it to be Wolfie, begging for help like a scared child rather than a wolfman. Now in cuffs, the sheriff thanks the gang for solving the smuggling mystery, having been unable to figure out how the sheep rustlers were getting them across the river unseen. All along, after using the barrels with air hoses, they shear the sheep in the mill, then ship them to the black market. The werewolf get up and open grave were just for show to scare people off. Shaggy gets one last scare though, jumping into Fred's big, strong arms, as the Wolfman makes another appearance. And that's Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Werewolf. I love how inconsistent and off-model the animation is in this one. It's less usual to find the original series looking quite as silly as this one does, but it adds a lot of charm to it for me. The werewolf certainly is different from the one in the prior episode, really only sharing species and green color scheme. Like I said, the way that it growls in a more animalistic way really sets this one apart, and I do think it leans a little toward being unsettling in the best way, really emphasizing the wolf part of the man. I also really like the idea of the wolf being a ghost this time, rising from the grave. Although I don't think a ghost would mean the body leaving the grave like that unless it's possessing its own body. The rustlers probably didn't think that part through. Also kind of funny is that this werewolf actually is supposed to be a ghost, but the one in the prior episode isn't despite the episode title. I feel like this episode is one of the ones that isn't quite as talked about or remembered compared to some of the other classics of the original series. I think the prior episode definitely overshadows it. You'll always see that werewolf instead of this one the majority of the time. I've always really liked this one though. I think there are a lot of good moments and elements that make this one still stand out, and I think the original series did need an episode focused on an actual werewolf rather than just a werewolf being one of many. You even still get a little bit of universal horror this time, which I think is something else that I always really appreciate about both of these episodes growing up. Having access to something that's drawing from those movies, but maybe isn't quite as threatening, but still certainly having moments. It's kind of interesting that, in contrast to the previous episode where the gang were specifically seeking out the location, this time we really don't know why they are here. They just randomly are stopped and camping for the night, and then everything plays out by coincidence. Maybe this one isn't necessarily as memorable as the prior episode, but I think it's still easily one of the strong ones the original has to offer. The majority of the second and final season had a lot of general bangers. I've even covered all but 3 of them at some point on the channel now. I think this Wolfman deserves at least a few more flowers than he gets despite his brother overshadowing him. I think that's all I have. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so let's start wrapping this up. Well, those are both certainly some of the top-tier episodes this show has to offer, especially heading into the spookier season if you really want to target the quintessential choices for what to watch. I think it's perfectly understandable that these episodes have been paired together multiple times. The Wolfmen complement each other while having just enough to stand out as their own individual episodes. I think the Galloping Ghost's name is still a choice I maybe would not have made, but when you name the most recognizable and best the original has to offer, you know this one is going to be on someone's list 9 times out of 10. Carlotta alone really sells it, but between old Dracula, the Wolfman, and the Monstrous, all in a beautiful creepy castle location, all full of that universal horror feeling, it's hard to find more perfect choices for the spookiest adventures and mysteries. Likewise, hopefully you can see and agree that the Big Bad Werewolf also is deserving of his flowers now, between his creepy snarls and his bald head by the end that give him a lot of good personality and moments to shine on his own without 3 other characters overshadowing him. He even stalks the trio first, rather than the boys, which isn't something you see every day. If you're looking for the best Halloween choices this year from Scooby, at least one of these absolutely needs to be present and accounted for. And what Halloween really is complete without a little Scooby? The season of the witch is getting closer, so plan wisely as we cross that bridge, especially if there's a full moon. Maybe I'll see you again, and maybe Silas Long will have the last howl. Bye.
You stop that.